Hello, everybody. I gotta get this Michael Servetus removed off the stage here. Oh, how's everyone doing? I wanted to stream for a bit to go through, hopefully, all or at least most of an essay written by Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz that was published around 2005 called Peace Without Conciliation, the Irrelevance of Toleration in Judaism. I think it's an interesting article. It was recommended to me and others by Jacob, and I think has some good insights for Noahides as well. So I'm going to bring it up to the stage here. Oh no. Gotta get the Servetus background off. I thought that was gonna go away. Background. Oh, that didn't do it. Oh. Well, you know what? I'm going to start this over without the countdown. Stand by. Or actually, there we go. All right, I'll just change the layout here. I think I got it. Now let's find one that zooms in on this more. Here, I'll pop the link in the chat. Okay, well, the text is kind of small, but as lots of you like to listen anyway, I'm going to read the text and then comment on it so you can just follow along. I will read it from a larger screen. Okay, so this is about looks like a 6-page PDF, so it shouldn't be too long. Let's get started. So, peace without conciliation, the irrelevance of toleration in Judaism. The interactions that are possible between Jews and non-Jews in modern times are fundamentally different from those of any previous era in Jewish history. Particularly in the Western world, Jews and non-Jews meet each other in civil society on an equal footing. In the secular context of the modern state, a consensus has been reached about religious freedom. Jews, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, and Buddhists may live side by side, and each by his own faith shall live. So that's actually a pretty interesting thing to think about, because I think the history of Western civilization, Christianity, Christendom, the last 2,000 years, that has not been the case. And it's really only been within, the last bit of time, relatively in the great scope of history, that religious tolerance is extended pretty far and wide, which makes essays like this even possible. Despite this infrastructure of toleration, our times are plagued by the religious fanaticism and hatred, or are plagued by religious fanaticism and hatred. It seems that the political consensus to live and let live has done little to alleviate the intolerance that is inherent to religious belief. The difficulties involved in recognizing the faith of others are particularly acute when the religions involved are monotheisms. Every religion makes claims to truth that cast doubt on the claims made by other religions, but in monotheist religions, those claims tend to be absolute and exclusive. Belief in a unique and omnipotent God who lives beyond the limitations of time, who created the universe and has revealed truths through his prophets, makes it difficult to account for alternatives. A significant proportion of all warfare, ancient and modern, has resulted from the uncompromising beliefs of the monotheist faithful. True story, I think. My point is that toleration is a concept very hard to apply in the context of monotheism. An analogy between science and religion may be useful. Monotheist religions are, in one respect at least, like the natural sciences. A polytheism or henotheism can tolerate more than one claim to truth. I'll jump the slide ahead in case you're squinting at it. A polytheism or a henotheism can tolerate more than one claim to truth, even when those claims in some degree conflict. Polytheist and henotheist religions are in this way like the humanities. They make room for, even if they do not thrive on, diverging points of view. The opinions and interpretations of others are taken to be valid if they are seen to be cogent. But in the natural sciences, there is a distinction between truth and falsehood, or at least between falsified and unfalsifiable or unfalsified results. The idea of falsehood is at the core of any science and of each monotheism. There is a true God and there are false gods. The truth of the one God is absolute and exclusive. However desirable religious toleration may be, the basic nature of monotheism is an obstacle to tolerance. Certainly, I think we see this amongst Christians, like within Christianity. We see this certainly come from Islam, between Islam and Christianity, I think Judaism is. I guess we will see how Judaism falls into this. I do not believe that there is a definitive solution to this problem. Religious beliefs cannot and really should not figure as options on a list of legitimate alternatives. However, there are partial solutions about which not enough has been said. Judaism, despite the absolute and exclusionary quality of its monotheism, has a side that tends toward openness and toleration. This side of Judaism has also an expression in the Jewish abstention from proselytizing. Even ultimately, Judaism does not view itself as the religion of all people. It is the religion of the Jews alone, and is, for almost all its practitioners, inherited. Right, there are few converts relative to inherited Jews historically. The assumption that Judaism is the religion of one people and a few unsought converts is emphatically a normative principle and is important to our discussion because it suggests that within Jewish doctrine there is room for the religious beliefs of others. This principle applies not only to the world as it is today, but also to the messianic projections that Judaism makes for the future. Although the messianic era represents an ultimate vindication of truth as Judaism understands it, a time when the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob will assert his dominion over all the world, at that time the peoples of the world will not embrace Judaism and will not come to observe Jewish law. In the closing chapters of his monumental Code of Jewish Law, Maimonides gives an account of the end of days. In his portrayal, the messianic realm is one of peace, but not uniformity of faith. According to Maimonides, when Isaiah saw the wolf and the lamb lying down together, what he envisioned was not a change in the nature of creation. Wolves will still be wolves and lambs, lambs. What will change is the relationship between them. At the end of days, the different peoples of the world will not become less different. And because they will not embrace a single faith, the prohibition against Gentiles undertaking distinctively Jewish practices will continue. However, each religion will come to share with all the others a small set of fundamental truths, and people everywhere will abandon violence, theft, and oppression. All right, so moving on to the next page. Jews rarely have had the political power to enforce their beliefs on others. But, as Maimonides suggests, that lack of power does not explain why Jews have refrained from sending missionaries to convert Gentiles. The Jewish tradition enshrines one set of expectations for Jews and another for non-Jews. The 11th chapter of all of the Talmudic tractate Sanhedrin begins with the assurance of Isaiah that, quote, all Israel will have a portion in the world to come. The rest of the chapter is dedicated to discussing exactly what transgressions may lead to a Jew's forfeiting that entitlement. The offenses that dominate the discussion are inapplicable to Gentiles who have no investment in the Torah per se. One offense for which a Jew forfeits his place in the world to come is denial that resurrection of the dead is intimated in the Torah. A Tibetan Lama would not likely make such a denial. A Lama might well not believe in bodily resurrection, but he would have no reason to deny or affirm or indeed care that the doctrine is intimated in an ancient Hebrew text. Such ordinances are irrelevant to most Gentiles, though matters are more complex with respect to Christians who include the Torah in their own Bible. Likewise, if Gentiles are forbidden to undertake distinctively Jewish practices, i.e. the wearing of phylacteries, for example, or the separation of meat and milk, then their salvation cannot be foreclosed on the grounds that they did not undertake to observe them. In other words, the righteous among the Gentiles are not blocked, as transgressor Jews are, from redemption, but righteous Gentiles have their own path different from that of Jews. At the end of the righteous Gentiles' path are the same eternal rewards that await the righteous among the Jews. So I think this is, maybe new ideas to some people, but maybe the long and short of it is that the Torah as given to Moses, or at least the commandments, the 613 commandments or the 10 commandments, were given to the nation of Israel specifically, and not to the other nations. So not following or keeping the Torah is not incumbent on those nations and those people, and so they are not culpable, and their salvation does not depend on what is commanded to the Jews. So going on, toleration would not be an accurate name for this doctrine. Basically, this doctrine that you just described of different standards applying to different peoples. And certainly the doctrine is not one of religious equivalence. However, the approach that Judaism takes towards righteous Gentiles offers a partial solution to the problem of intolerance in monotheistic religions. By establishing different sets of expectations for different groups, Judaism makes room for adherents of other faiths to perform their own religious obligations in a way that entitles them to salvation by the God of Israel. So again, it's still salvation by the God of Israel, but there are other paths. While Jews are enjoined to follow 613 commandments of the Torah, the demands that normative Judaism makes of Gentiles comprise only 7 laws. These 6 prohibitions and 1 positive commandment are together known as the Noahide laws because, according to chapter 7 of Sanhedrin, they were the series of laws given to Noah after the flood, though they differ little from the basic laws given to Adam. The Noahide laws set a universal standard for Gentile religions and embody the truth that, according to Maimonides, the peoples of the world will come to recognize and share at the end of days. Thus, the Noahide laws delineate the boundaries of Jewish religious toleration. Failure to observe these laws would bar a person or a people from entering their own gate into heaven. The Jews' gate is not open to them. Okay, next page. Now, this, I can already hear the complaints of syncretism or relativism from Christians, but we'll get to that. I think that gets addressed, later. Continuing on, one of the highest principles of the Noahide laws is belief in the one God. Both Islam and Christianity though Trinitarian doctrine presents a complication, satisfy this key demand and clear the way for Jewish recognition of these religions. But what of, to take more difficult cases, the Indic religions and the various kind of Buddhism? Again, I do not believe that a definitive solution is possible, but a partial solution may be considered. It is important to introduce a distinction between theology and religious practice. In the ancient religions grouped under the name of Hinduism, there are many gods and local shrines, but the theological principles that guide belief and provide a uniformity of moral standards assume that all the deities revered in India or elsewhere are forms of, expressions of, or names for one ultimate reality or God. Saivites propose Siva as the best name among many names for this ultimacy. Visnavites, I'm going to butcher the language, unfortunately, prefer Vishnu or Krishna. Atman is an Upanishadic word for the same principle, and Brahmin is perhaps the most common way among non-Muslim, non-Christian Indians of naming ultimacy. As for Buddhism, the difficulty is not that there is a plethora of gods, though Siddhartha Gautama and other Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and incarnate lamas are often treated as godlike. The difficulty from the perspective of the Noahide laws is that it is unclear whether Buddhism is theistic at all. Buddhist thinkers tend to argue that metaphysical beliefs are among the causes of human suffering. Parenthetically here, it says, there are parables attributed to the Buddha in which the metaphysician or theologian is likened to one who has been shot by an arrow and is worried about who made the arrow, how it was constructed, and how it flew into its mark, instead of trying to remove it and doctor the wound. Ooh, sick burn. I think that's there's some wisdom to that. Still, it is not necessarily atheistic to conclude that because holding metaphysical beliefs leads to pain, it is best to concentrate our attention on proper human behavior. In other words, in any case, however controversial the question of whether Buddhism is theistic, it is certainly not polytheistic. I thought that was an interesting kind of reflection on the nature of what's important in religion, what you do or what you believe. But anyway, moving on. By the standards of Jewish law as applies to Jews, Hinduism and Buddhism do not count as monotheistic traditions. However, the essential point of the Noahide laws is that the standards of Jewish law do not apply to non-Jews. Radically pure monotheism is expected by Judaism only from Jews. The Noahide laws do not preclude Gentile religions from developing softer, more complex, and compromised forms of monotheism. Under the Noahide laws, it is possible to assume that Hinduism and Buddhism are sufficiently monotheistic in principle for moral Hindus and Buddhists to enter the Gentiles' gate into heaven. Jewish law regards the compromises made or tolerated by the world's major religions as ways of rendering essentially monotheistic theologies easier in practice for large populations of adherents. The fierceness of Islamic opposition to such compromises has no counterpart in Judaism. In Islam, it is seriously blasphemous for anyone of whatever faith to combine belief in the one God, with popular ideas about other heavenly powers or with subtle theological doctrines such as the Trinity. Islam cannot tolerate such compromises because the truth that they violate is applicable universally and not simply to Muslims. The problem is that Islam is radically monotheistic, like Judaism, yet it is also, unlike Judaism, which is the religion of one people, universalistic as well. So that's a good call out about the nature of Islamic monotheism. Jump ahead to the next page. We're getting there. It is an entirely normative principle in Judaism that the monotheism expected of Gentiles by the Noahide laws is of a less absolute kind than that expected of Jews. In the Middle Ages, many authorities indeed recognized Christian doctrine, even the doctrine of the Trinity, as a basically monotheistic belief. One can readily understand how the doctrine of a triune Godhead could contaminate Christianity's claim to be monotheistic. However, Christianity was generally not considered polytheistic or idolatrous, though Maimonides, who did not live in Christendom, dissented from the widespread rabbinic agreement on this point. Yeah, well, that's a big dissenter right there. The concept of the Trinity was represented in the church as a mystery or a paradox because it apparently contradicted a central component of their faith in the one God. Thus, the Trinity, even though it is an essential feature of Christian theology and not merely one of folk religion, could be taken by Jewish scholars as a supplement to rather than a replacement for the idea of God as one. By Jewish standards, as applies to Jews, Trinitarianism is not monotheism. But by the standards of the Noahide laws, the doctrine of the Trinity is not an idolatrous belief to which Judaism can express an objection. Okay, the plot thickens. The Noahide laws provide a mechanism for thinking about religious tolerance, but they are not, at least in modern terms, examples themselves of liberal toleration. The Noahide laws presuppose the superior purity of Jewish belief and, to a more limited extent, of Jewish practices. Thus, the difference between Judaism's expectations of Jews and its expectations of Gentiles suggests a hierarchy of religions, and this is important. However illiberal the system may sound to modern ears, the existence of a hierarchy of expectations results in a set of rules for defining heresy that do not concern non-Jews. While the simplest violation of belief in the one God constitutes a heresy within the Jewish world, the popular beliefs of Gentiles are met with understanding. The less than absolutely monotheistic folk beliefs of Christianity or Buddhists are taken in Jewish law to be violations of Christianity and Buddhism, religions that are in themselves adequately monotheistic. Hence, such beliefs are only problematic internally, solely within the discourse of another religion. Such violations do not affect what Judaism has to say about Christianity or Buddhism or any other religious tradition. The standards of Jewish law cannot be violated where they do not apply. So I think, maybe what that is referring to, or at least that's what I thought about, was like, say, Marian devotion, the cult of the saints, parts of Catholicism and Orthodoxy in particular that are, get a little far afield even just of the Trinity and Jesus. But even things like what is it? I forget in Spanish, but the cult of the dead in like Mexico and stuff, where there's like syncretism and other sorts of practices and beliefs that kind of get mixed into the Christian stew. It kind of sounds like the rabbi is saying here that in a way Judaism doesn't really necessarily like take a stance or get involved in those disputes. It sort of understands what it believes or what it understands to be the official doctrine and says that's monotheistic enough. All right, so let's keep going. Judaism does not concern itself with the internal heresies of other religions, even when these have arisen to defend standards of monotheism to which Judaism itself adheres. The struggles over iconoclasm in the 7th century, struggles that touched the core of Christian monotheism, left no mark on Jewish writing about Christianity in the period. And the Jewish attitude towards Christianity was unaffected by the emergence of Protestant sects in the 16th century, some of which have practices that might be said to resemble those of Judaism more closely than do those of the Catholic Church. The Jewish stance towards Islamic monotheism has been unaffected by the internal struggles between Sunni and Shiite factions, and Judaism has likewise nothing to say about the Sunni Wahhabi struggle to purify Islam of folk practices, for example, grave worship, that contradict the basis of Islamic monotheism. These struggles have had no bearing on Jewish writings about Islam. Judaism is not affected by these internal struggles because they are recognized to occur beyond the boundaries of Jewish law. The monotheism of the Gentiles is a category that rests at the very edge of Jewish law, the halakha, while also lying beyond the boundaries of halakhic deliberation. The extreme precision with which the halakha defines and categorizes its legal concepts has never been applied to the Noahide laws. Take, as another example, the Noahide prohibition of incest. While the internal standards of Jewish law define incest in great detail, the Noahide laws do not. Ultimately, the prohibition applies among Gentiles, in only some of the cases forbidden to Jews. While a Jew may not marry his brother's ex-wife, a Gentile may do so without fear of incest. Similarly, the patriarch Jacob, who lived before the law was given at Sinai, is not censured for having married 2 sisters, although doing so is expressly forbidden in the Mosaic law. The idea that certain laws of Judaism do not apply to all is an essential feature of the halakha. Special standards of religious practice apply to men, while women are exempted from all commandments that must be practiced at a fixed time. The people of Israel are not bound by the special obligations incumbent upon the priesthood. Kohanim, the descendants of Aaron, must keep from contact with the dead outside their immediate families in order to preserve the ritual purity of the priesthood. And the priesthood is not bound by the same rules of purity that must be observed by the high priest, who cannot attend the funeral of even his own parents and children. The high priest would not think to censure his fellow priests for attending their parents' funerals. A common priest, a Kohen, would not think to censure an ordinary Jew for attending a funeral of a friend, teacher, or cousin. Indeed, an ordinary Jew might be censured for not attending. Different standards apply to different groups, even within the Jewish community. The Noahide laws operate on the same principle. Differing standards apply to different groups. But as I have already indicated, the recognition of difference is not an acknowledgement of equivalence. The high priest standard of purity is more demanding than that of the common priesthood because he alone enters the Holy of Holies and approaches the Ark of the Covenant. A priest standard of purity is more demanding than that of a common Jew because priests officiate in the temple of God. Even Elijah Ben Moseg, who was perhaps the rabbinic figure most open toward, most appreciative of Christianity and Islam, viewed the relationship between Judaism and those other religions in hierarchical terms. However open-minded his writings may seem in comparison with those of others in the 19th century, Ben Moseg was, after all, chief rabbi of Venice and in every respect orthodox. Israel was for Ben Moseg, I'm sorry if I continue butchering his name, as the Torah ordains, a priesthood to the nations. And Ben Moseg clearly saw it as a part of that priesthood's task to correct the doctrines of Gentile religions when they erred. He wrote, for instance, that Christianity is but a distorted Kabbalah. This hierarchical aspect of Noahide legal thought might be viewed as an unpromising model for regulating relations among the monotheist faiths. But its illiberal equality is, I want to conclude by arguing, what is most promising about the Noahide model. Basically, it does not require most religions to give up or modify the meaning of such words as true and truth. It provides a basis for conversation among religions without the expectation of compromise between or reconciliation of claims. It requires no concession to objectionable beliefs and practices, though the Noahide model does sharply restrict the applicability of one's religion's laws to any others. The Noahide approach, in other words, is a formula for more than peace. The Noahide approach, in other words, is a formula for no more than peace. But then peace is in itself among the very greatest of religious values. The end. Andrew, what'd you think?
I thought it was good. I kind of lost it halfway through.
You getting hungry?
Yeah, a bit. I just woke up.
No.
You
working tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have you have not read this one before? I know
I've read it before.
You have read it before.
Yeah. I think most of it was an argument. I'll summarize here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Most of it was an argument for the Jewish hierarchical worldview, wherein different people have different relationships with God. Not so much in that we're all different, but that we have different responsibilities, different roles. Again, the whole priestly, Noahides, Jews, priests, high priests, all that jazz. And in that worldview, as opposed to the modern secular one, we can have peace without toleration, because in realizing a specific place within the hierarchy, this is best exemplified in our shared recognition of a different halacha. So, under toleration, I can say, I think this person is doing wrong, but I'll tolerate it because whatever reason. Maybe I think they're gonna come to the truth and change their ways. Maybe I think that they're in a weird headspace. Maybe I think that, oh, they grew up in a bad environment, some secular reason. But when you have this hierarchical worldview, when you recognize differing halacha for different people, you realize how different steps can lead to the same God. What do you think? I'm sorry, I think I rambled a little bit.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, I think some of like the core takeaways, and maybe there's like more than one, depending on what your interests are from this essay. One is that, yeah, peace is more important than truth, maybe, or well, in the title is the irrelevance of toleration, right? Like, or even and even that's like the second heading or the second title. The first title is peace without conciliation. So like, you don't have to agree, and there doesn't have to be a perfect doctrinal adherence for the nations, right? The strictness of monotheism definitely applies to Jews, but the level of wiggle room of monotheism outside of Judaism, it seems like is more than, I think it's more than like Islam and Christianity typically attribute to itself or to monotheism itself, right? Like a lot of Christian ink has been spilled, like at least early on, around Christology and the nature of grace and the Trinity and all those things, right? And it was important, like, not to be a semi-Pelagian, let alone a Pelagian, and like, there were always big, anathemas, and condemnations for having heterodoxy, right? That's why they call it orthodoxy. I think that's just an interesting perspective, especially for a Noahide, and a Noahide even who, in particular, who comes out of Christianity. That maybe some of these Jewish principles, worldviews, framing, should be adopted, right? And I've been talking with Antonio about kind of, what's the Noahide mission or path for, for us. And there's talk about, forming communities and trying to, develop spiritual practices and things that, not creating our own religion, of course, but just, replicating some of that liturgical experience, but also how to engage the rest of the world. Maybe not even Christianity or other religions, but the unreligious or the irreligious, the nuns, right? The people who swim in the moralistic therapeutic deism waters, right? Like, should they be encouraged to adopt Noahidism to a full extent. And so I thought this essay, and I can't remember, Jacob brought it up recently in a conversation with me, and I can't remember what we were talking about, but I think it was around this issue maybe. But I read it again and thought, hey, this is, I think, something that could be shared more.
How would you summarize the essay?
I would summarize the essay. I mean, there's a couple of summarizations. One would be like, so maybe it's more like kind of bigger takeaways. One would be that there's obviously a significant portion of Judaism, rabbinic, authority that sort of sees, Christianity, for instance, and even the non-Islamic Christian religions as monotheistic enough to qualify as Noahide. So it's a broader definition. That's one takeaway. That I mean, I think what he's also trying to say, I think the point of the essay, maybe the point that he's trying to make and focus on more, is that the inherent truth claim fight within monotheistic religions is maybe irreconcilable, but that for Judaism, that's okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be reconciled, because for Judaism, the standards are different. It's seen more hierarchical than zero sum. So it's, there's no resolution to the conflicts, but I think that there's no inherent resolution between the absolutist religions, and Judaism still puts itself at the top of the hierarchy, but I guess doesn't stand in some kind of a judgment or doesn't interfere with the others. And again, and that's the particular essay, and I think of it from, okay, as a Noahide, as a Noahide, not just sort of de facto and by default, or like an unwitting Noahide, but a capital N self-conscious one who is adopting Orthodox Judaism and converting to the degree that a non-Jew can convert before actually converting and becoming a Jew. What's our relationship with the other monotheistic religions that we swim around with? And are we not proselytizing too? And where's that line? Where's that boundary? Where's that line? And that's part of the question that Antonio and I are talking about, is where is the line between, promulgating the 7 laws of Noah, right? Just, speaking them, making people aware of them, basically just going out and saying these are the 7 commandments that God gave to the nations, but then how far do we, and saying what they are, and but then do you go to the next step and say, but also it's important to believe that these were commanded by God to Moses at Sinai. That is a requirement for being counted among the righteous of the nations for Maimonides. So there's different gradations of like Noahide practice and adherence. And so, at what point do you sort of, and the thing is though, like would a Christian would accept that God gave the Torah to Moses at Sinai. It might just be he gave the Torah to everybody, or he gave the Torah to Israel, but we're Israel now. So like where does the error come in, and like what's the nature of it? Or they might say, hey, I don't remember reading anything about a 7 Noahide laws in Exodus, right? Because it's not in the written Torah explicitly per se, or at least not in a way that they're pulling out of it, right? So yeah, so I mean it's an interesting question. I mean, I don't know, does and I'm not even really sure what Islam thinks of that statement, that proposition. I'm going to jump into the peanut gallery really quickly and see what's been. I'm not going to feed the trolls. Dawn says, I always hear peace as a higher level than just toleration. I think that was part of that essay. All right, Yoav says, there is no contradiction. If all sides believe in tolerance, then tolerance does not contradict belief. Yeah. Is that a tautology? Panda person says hello. Hello, Panda person. Yoav, who is General GG? Uh-oh, here comes Kirk. What's up, Kirk?
Oh.
Is General GG Graham Grizz? Would make sense.
Don't look at me.
He is hard to understand.
General
There's a
Grim
rumor
Grizz?
going around that General Grim Grizz is a secret billionaire running a shadow cabal.
I don't think it's a rumor.
You think it's a fact?
I think it's out in the open.
You think it's
It's not a rumor. If anything, it's out in the open.
It's an open rumor. It's an open secret.
No, yeah.
New comments.
So what do you think? What do you think Noahidism is?
Noahidism. It's a bad word. It's a I was gonna say an ugly word. That's not really true. It's an unfortunate term that draws from idiomatic English usage of something that we throw an ism on it. It gives it kind of a thingness. But there's lots of isms out there, and isms tend to be like not good or cultish or I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, Noahidism is a thing, right? Like there is belief structure, and there's both the propositional and practice element to being a Noahide. So like it's an ism in that sense.
All right, Claire says that Noahidism is Gentile righteousness, which I think is Not a bad way to say it, but I think what ends up happening is people are like, well, okay, but like say more.
So it's like, I
Define it
mean,
more. But yeah.
could I give my perspective on this?
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to keep interrupting you.
It's okay. So the way I see it is there's two senses in which one can say there's no Noahidism. There's the sense of like, okay, are you fulfilling the bare requirements that Noahides are expected to keep? So are you basically keeping the seven laws? And under that sense, you can say Christianity is a form of Noahidism because basically most Christians, according to some rabbinic interpretations, are basically Noahides. Right, but then the second sense you can, in which you can say Noahidism, is like, okay, are you a believer in like the 13 principles of faith? You observe the seven Noahide laws, but you do them intentionally, and like, do you try and like refine your character, refine your midot, and like you go to like Jewish like Musar and stuff like that. So like capital N Noahide, and so like yeah, you could say Noahidism is Gentile righteousness, but to say like what is Noahidism, it's just like there's two senses of the term.
Yeah. I mean, Antonio and I and some of us call it small n versus big N Noahidism. So a big N Noahide is one who follows the seven laws because they were commanded by God to Moses at Sinai.
Yeah, and even but in practice for a big N Noahide, there's not just going to be the seven laws because while there is the seven laws, in practice, if you're a big N Noahide who's serious about it, you're also going to like honor your parents and like give the charity and like do
Well,
this.
okay, but those are arguably part of the seven laws.
And I got a different question. You're
Oh,
heading out?
no, I thought you were gonna say
Oh
I gotta
God.
go.
I
I
love
heard that, and I'm like, all right, man.
Um,
Peace.
Yeah. What do you think about small R versus big R religion? How does small R versus big R religion differ from small N versus big N Noahidism?
Well,
Because this touches on peace without reconciliation too.
I mean, a capital R religion is probably going to mean an organized religion, something with a creed, a practice, right? So it, like one versus another, right? Well, I guess like, whereas like lowercase religion would be more of
Okay.
the
Can I,
quality of religious, modify, yeah.
Okay. To maybe modify and sharpen the point, you have a moralistic therapeutic deist who believes that there's a bunch of big R religions out there, but has
None of them are for
decided
me.
to follow their small R religion. And maybe that includes monotheism, maybe that includes various beliefs about God, how God loves them. They don't look too much into it, but they follow their small R religion. How does that differ from a Noahide who, how does that differ from a big N Noahide, and how does that differ from a small N Noahide?
I don't know if there's an easy way to sort of create the analogy there, but I think if you're a moralistic therapeutic deist and you say, okay, I see all the religions out there and I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to be spiritual but not religious, or I want to be small R religious. They're really just creating their own big R religion for themselves, though, right? I mean, in a way, I think that's a fair accusation, and a case could be made for that. So there's no escaping. Why do I think what?
Why do you think it's a fair accusation?
Well, because I think they are in some ways acting in the most radical Protestant way. Right? Now, I mean, obviously whatever they believe and practice doesn't have to resemble Christianity, but like I think they set themselves up to be their own authority on religious matters, right?
So do you think small n Noahidism versus small r Noahidism differs in
Okay, so yes,
acknowledgement of the
so maybe this will help. I think. And I could pull it up, but I'll try to summarize as best I can. Like, if you accidentally keep the 7 Noahide laws,
Mhm.
And understanding that, like, establishing courts of justice is kind of unclear of how an individual will keep that. But like, let's just say that you perfectly keep the 7 Noahide laws, but you don't know them as such. You don't even know that they're divine commandments. You just don't murder people. You don't steal, and you've got a moral code. You've got a strong moral code. You don't get out much. You're not real popular with the ladies or the guys, whatever. So you're just, for whatever reason, you just manage to keep the Noahide laws all your life. I don't know exactly if you were considered righteous among the nations and or have a place in the world to come. But you kept all the laws, but you didn't know it. So like, okay, so there's like, is that person a Noahide? I don't know. That'd be a stretch. Okay. Now, what if you believe that these laws are reasonable, right? So you didn't accidentally keep them. You're like, no. Like, this is like, I've got philosophical reasons for like not murdering because I read a lot of Peter Singer in college and like this, that, and the other thing, right? And like, I don't eat the limb of a live animal because, like, my God, who would do that? That's so cruel, right? Okay, so at that point, you have now followed the Noahide laws as a, as it occurred to you from your own reason and faculties, right? So you follow the law. There again, I think this is that exact example is one where Maimonides says some combination of they're not considered pious among the nations and or don't have a place in the world to come. It's harsh, right? Okay, and then the next category would be probably, well, I think that God gave these laws to us, right? And now again, maybe you're a Christian and you've never heard of the 7 Noahide laws, but you heard of the 10 Commandments. And so, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. You've internalized those, and those do happen to coincide with the 7 Noahide laws. They just so happen to be, pretty much the same thing. Maybe you also think that God brought you out of Egypt. Okay, that's a mistake, but like, you got the 7 covered from the 10 Commandments, more or less. And I mean, maybe you don't believe that Moses ever existed and that Sinai ever happened, but like, you just believe in God and you believe that these are the 10 Commandments, and like so you somehow have this thread of adherence to these commandments as divine commands because you believe in God and you believe these are commandments that come from God. That sort of inches you, or I don't know if it inches you or puts you a mile down the path, right? And again, halakhic status of all this, like, but this is where it starts to get more and more interesting. And then there are people who are like, I accept the 7 Noahide laws because these are the laws that explicitly were given to the nations. Well, I guess you could be like, I believe in the Bible they were given. Actually, this would be kind of a strange irony. If you believe in the Bible and so you're like, well, they were given to Adam and they were given to Noah, and so these are divine commands. I'm going to follow them because they're divine commands. But I don't believe that they were promulgated by Moses at Sinai, and I don't believe that part. I don't care about that part. the irony kind of is that you do believe in it because that's how the Torah came to be from Moses to Sinai. But like, nevertheless, right? You don't like sort of give some kind of adherence to that, right?
And then, so could I continue to
jump,
like what I think?
yeah, jump in. I don't think there's another stage before just actually accepting it. Well, actually accepting it because
actually, so what I was
because
gonna
the rabbis teach it, and you've basically accepted that the Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the next state, there would be two more stages. So the next stage after that would be someone who's like, I'm a Christian, but like they're a Christian who emphasizes the Old Testament a lot,
Yep.
and so I believe these guys do come to Moses on Mount Sinai, but I happen to be Christian, so they're really basically a Noahide following the quote unquote Old Testament, but they identify as Christian. So that would be like a Christian, like as close to a Noahide as a Christian can get. And then
Oh.
the league after that would be just someone who's like, I'm just a Noahide. I follow the 7 Noahide laws because I believe in my mommy's 13 principles of faith.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
And then but it should be noted, like, I think with the Noahide movement as it grows, you're also going to see like there's like white belt Noahides and yellow belt Noahides and black belt Noahides. Like I think as the Noahide movement grows, you're gonna start seeing like, okay, so you have like your average Noahide who's like doesn't, and you have like someone who's like super righteous and like does more than they're obligated, and maybe they go to school every week. And then maybe eventually you get like someone who's like a Noahide sage, like who's someone who's like so well educated that they could like lead like a Noahide prayer service if those ever become things. Like I also think even though like they would all basically have the same halakhic status, pretty much, you could also say there's a certain level of spectrum, which you could say there would be different levels of like average Noahide versus educated versus like sage Noahide. Does that make sense?
It does, but I don't know that would be kosher.
So you don't think? What about that? Do you not think would be kosher?
I don't. That sounds suspiciously like creating a new religion.
So perhaps a related question.
Okay.
We talked about the different levels, and at some point along these levels, you go from a maybe MTD, small r, religious to small n, Noahide. How does that jump give you peace without conciliation? Or what is it? Peace without toleration?
Well, it's peace without conciliation. Conciliation is kind of a... What's conciliation? Another word for...
I know reconciliation.
All right, we all know reconciliation. Conciliation, the act of stopping someone from being angry. Oh, placation. Yeah, peace without placation. Like you're not like abandoning your position while not killing the other person because they don't agree with you.
Okay.
Although another definition is the act of mediating between two disputing people or groups. So peace without mediating.
Without, yeah.
But I guess I don't think that there's a relationship necessarily between an MTD adherent becoming more religious or Noahide, but having to like change their... Well, I mean, maybe they'd have to... They already are kind of... They're already sort of at a peaceful position. I guess it is a toleration, but I guess that's irrelevant too.
Well, so could I kind of steer this into what you were saying, John? Just
I'll
as
be
a
right back.
response. Okay, never mind. Oh, hello, Antonio. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Do you have
Good.
anything you want to say?
Oh no, I was just hopping on. I know Jonathan said he was going to stream, but I couldn't hop on right away. Was doing dinner, and now the kids are asleep.
Mhm.
Are you a Noahide, Antonio?
Yeah,
Okay. And Andrew, you're an Orthodox Christian?
Yeah.
he's also an electrician, right?
Apprentice.
Oh yeah, electrical. How's that going?
Good. The back is killing me, but other than that, everything's good.
Are you spending a lot of time up in the air?
No, on the ground. I'm doing working on them all.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Also,
pretty cool.
I
Mhm.
see, I'm scrolling up in chat, and I see a while back Claire asked if I'm a Christian. No, I'm a Noahide, Claire. And Claire, no, I don't think most Christians actually are idolaters. Um, but yeah.
Don't get Claire
So
started on that.
Yeah,
not that Claire is what?
talk to Claire.
Don't get Claire started on
Don't
that.
talk to
Kirk,
Claire.
Kirk, you were asking me something, but I had to grab a phone
Yeah.
call. Did you?
Oh, I was just gonna say. So in response to you saying like, what if it's like creating a new religion? So like, I don't think attending synagogue services or like having like a Noahide prayer group would be creating a new religion, especially if it's done
Agreed.
with like rabbinic oversight.
Agreed. But you started talking about different classes of
So,
Noahides and
one
certain
of-
kinds.
So what I meant by that was I was just saying that like you could conceptualize it at a certain level of abstraction as like there's like educated Noahides and less educated Noahides and more observant and less observant Noahides. Just like
Well, that's
there's
kind of like rabbis, right? Like, and there's no, they don't have belts that they wear, right? There's a pecking order of reputation and authority that just kind of comes organically from the community, and I think that's as good as you're gonna get. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
there's
I
there's
agree, but I was just using
Yeah.
belt as like an analogy. I wasn't.
No, of course you are. No, I understand, and okay, I agree with you. I think probably as the movement increases in size and influence, there will probably become, and there already are, some more notable, more, I don't know, authoritative, but just there will be people who will rise up in the Noahide community who I think will help teach and promulgate and do those kinds of things too, and they will be working with rabbinical supervision and
Yeah.
or at least consultation, right? Because like there's also a little bit of a gray area there too about like how we're looking for direction, but like they're not coming and telling us what to do either, and like they give us the guidelines kind of, and unfortunately that doesn't always give us a whole lot of rope to work with, but also not enough rope to maybe hang ourselves either.
Yeah. Yeah, Claire is saying some things in chat which I don't even want to entertain.
Yeah, that's why I don't click on them.
Yeah. Well, so Antonio, if it's okay, what do you do professionally?
I work in retail.
Retail. Okay.
Well, I mostly operate a forklift, but it's in retail.
And how about you, Jonathan?
I operated a different kind of forklift and a different kind of retail. I do have to say to the group though, I've got about 15, 20-ish minutes before I turn into a pumpkin. So Antonio, I don't know if you want to keep streaming after I'm gone, but if you want to dive into some of the, I don't know, any topics or anything. Did you catch the stream while you were doing your other stuff, or?
I caught the first, I want to say 40-ish minutes, and
Oh, okay.
I was actually really getting into it, and then I had to stop listening so I could eat dinner with my kids. But I want to go back and watch the stream and hear what you were
Well,
saying.
Most of it was me reading through it with some light commentary peppered in. I don't know. Have you read that essay before yourself?
No, but I thought it was very interesting, and I want to read it myself now.
Yeah,
What's the name of the essay?
it's called Peace Without Conciliation, the Irrelevance of Toleration in Judaism. I'm sure if you ask nicely in the Discord, Kirk, it could be shared with you. It's a pretty quick read. It's like 8 pages or so.
Ask who in the Discord?
Anybody, just ask around.
Okay.
I don't know, Jan God, did we ever get the joke? Was the joke told, is what I mean to say. I don't know if we got the joke or not. Maybe we never got the joke, so to speak. Anyway, Antonio, yeah, so we went from a little discussion about that essay, and I did bring up some of the questions around how, our discussions around MTD, where the lines are drawn, how Noahide should, like, what's our path, what are the mission, like, what's the mission of Noahides, like, where, like, evangelizing, proselytizing, or not. So we were kind of like circling around some of those things, and then I think just before you joined too, like, we were talking about like the sort of steps of like on the spectrum from like I accidentally follow the 7 Noahide laws, but I have no idea what I'm doing, but I don't violate them for whatever reason, all the way up to I could live in the land of Israel as a Gentile. I have that halakhic status, right? And so, and just kind of going through like what's like the next increment, right, to see kind of where those sort of, not where the lines are drawn so much, but like just sort of what are these breakpoints that kind of go to the next level of closeness to the fullness of that's like, now I'm sounding like a Catholic. The closest alignment to Orthodox Judaism you can have as a non-Jew.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I still like to think of it in 2 stages, and like there's increments within those stages. But I think it's you either deliberately take on the Noahide code as a faith, or you don't. And if you don't, you can still observe and keep the 7. It's kind of how I still keep it in my head.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would eventually like to get around. Excuse me. I have a cough. One thing I would like to eventually get around to reading is the writings by Abraham Isaac Koop on like the different wisdom in the different religions, because I've heard Hezi talk about Rav Kook before, and I've heard that he has this idea that there's like different like wisdom in the different religious traditions, and so like how that manifests in relation to the Noahide movement I think would be an interesting thing to read about, but I wouldn't know where to start with that.
I mean, only
I asked the dash, but
Sorry,
yeah,
what
it's
was
good
that,
seeing
Antonio?
you have to bounce.
Oh, peace, Cinder. What were you saying, Antonio?
I was just gonna say the main relevance I see with that is just for Noahides on their own to trace back their own heritage and roots and finding and extracting the wisdom and peeling away the layers until they're basically following the 7. So that's kind of the beauty of it too, is I mean there really is no requirement for you to abandon your religion or your religious identity. But I think because we were talking about it in 2 stages, that's kind of what makes not what makes it permissible, but the first stage is obviously just outreach about the 7 laws, and then teach their own from where they go from there. Some people will keep going. Kind of sounds like that's how it went for you, Jonathan. And now you're a full blown Noahide.
Yeah, I mean, but I have less connection to a local synagogue than other Noahides, for instance, right now, and so it's complicated a bit. I think Yeah, what's interesting is like I've thought about, you know, taking my family to church, right? Mostly for the MTD education, well, and the exposure to the Hebrew Bible and the Torah, right?
Mhm.
And the thing is like, you know, what's sort of awkward for me is it's not so much that I'd be like, oh, you can't be a Noahide and be a Christian, but I don't have any reason why I would embrace Christianity again, right? Even though I don't have a problem with it, maybe, right?
Mhm.
I might not have a problem with it. But the thing is too, though, is I find that I think one of the things is like maybe we don't even have to evangelize or proselytize, because as soon as you go out there and you say that there are 7 commandments given by God to the nations, and we know this because Moses revealed it to us from God at Sinai, Christians will go nuts, and they will come after us. And the thing is, that's the whole story of how Judaism, I think, is spreading. Like a big reason why it spreads on the internet is because the counter missionary efforts, where you have in public now, right, rabbis who are speaking to Jews, explaining to them why Christianity is wrong and that they should come out of it, because that's not proselytizing. That's rescuing in their mind.
Yeah,
But
the counter
but what?
missionary.
Yeah, but when you listen to those arguments, right? I mean, that could potentially put you on a path that you didn't expect to go down. So, you know, I almost
You're
think
talking
like,
about listening to those arguments as a Gentile.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, and you might find yourself leaving the church, or you might find yourself even converting to Judaism. I think that so I mean, so maybe, you know, yeah, you like, if you build it, they will come, is the operative phrase here.
Yeah.
I wanted to respond to a couple of chats really quickly before.
Yeah. Well, before we end, I also have one thing to say about how people get into Noahidism. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. I got a few more minutes. I don't know, Antonio, do you want to try to pick this up again later
Yeah,
after
no,
I
we should
chat?
yeah, tomorrow. Oh, I don't know if tomorrow works for you. I mean, whatever night works for you, I should be able to
Okay.
make it happen.
No,
Tonight
go
was
ahead.
Well,
kind of an exception.
Yeah, go ahead, Kirk.
well, I was just going to say that one of the ways I think people get into Noahidism is that when Judaism is presented in popular culture, I think for some people who go down like more like you might say like culturally Jewish, like reform or conservative, like paths, end
Yep.
up becoming Noahides because, and maybe it's just me trying to induce my own anecdotal experience because that's kind of how happened. But like
Yep.
what I think happens for some people is. They get exposed to Judaism on like, oh, did you see like the Adam Sandler Hanukkah song? And that's like something that like, okay, so like you looked into Judaism and then you go into like, a local reform or conservative community because that's the most, Jewish communities in America. And
Yep.
then I think for like some portion of people who go through like reform or conservative, either like conversion processes or even like if people are just like exploring like Judaism, the first thing they're going to have access to is going to be like typically non-orthodox sources. But I think as people get more educated about Judaism, including from the non-orthodox sources, they start to look into like, okay, so like now let's kind of look into like other ones, and when they look into the orthodox ones, I think many of them realize like, yeah, that's what's for me. But Judaism doesn't expect me to convert, so I'll just be a Noahide. But like, I'm curious what you think about that.
That everything points to Orthodox Judaism. Yep, that's kind of how it is.
Yeah, I think yeah, if I'm understanding that kind of that journey, it's like you start off with, let's say, reform, or like the most accessible.
Reconstructionist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on where you live and what you know, like what's around. Like the Orthodox community in West Michigan is not as big probably as like the Reform and Conservative, which are also not very big. But you know, there's more established buildings and institutions around, I think, a Reform and Conservative synagogue, or what they call temple or whatever here than say the Chabad house. But yeah, if you find yourself as a non-Jew exploring Judaism, I think you're going to probably make your way, like Antonio said, to Orthodox Judaism, and then you are going to probably get faced with the Noahide. Well, faced with, I mean, like you'll learn about the Noahide path. Some people will probably, fewer people will probably convert, but if they're on a path to conversion, they might continue down that path and actually convert with an Orthodox conversion. But they may say, "Oh, I didn't realize that, Noahidism was actually what I wanted to do."
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that I find interesting is like I was taught by I was told by one Orthodox Jew that there's a sense in which you can argue that like Reform and conservative communities are often just like Noahites themselves, because when you think about it, a significant portion of Reform and conservative Jews are either A, the sense of patrilineal converts, or not patrilineal converts, patrilineal Jews, which would be like Reform. And so when you have like your dad's Jewish but your mom's not Jewish, you're not halakhically Jewish, but you're going to be considered Jewish in the Reform and probably some conservative communities. And then you have like all the non-Orthodox converts, and they're not considered halakhically Jewish, but from the Orthodox perspective. And so in practice, a significant portion of them are going to be halakhically non-Jewish from the Orthodox perspective. And so they're basically kind of being like their own Noahide-ish thing, right? It's kind of weird, but does that make sense?
Yeah, they're keeping the chairs warm.
Or do you think that's like not like a reasonable thing to say, Jonathan?
Halakhically non-Jewish but think they're Jews people are sort of de facto Noahides then?
Well, yeah, because like in practice, they're not going to be keeping all of the 613 mitzvot, because Reform conservative Jews don't believe in that, but they're going to keep the basic ethical mitzvot in Judaism that typically includes the Noahide laws, right?
I never thought about that really. I'm not sure if it's that interesting of a question. Well, why do you bring that up, Kirk?
Well, just because it's kind of interesting to think like if whether or not like a lot of the people, like we might think of conservative Reform Jewish communities as like heretical, and that's like you can argue true, but there's a sense in which the positive thing they do is they bring people who are halakhically not Jewish closer to the Noahide path. Does that make sense?
Maybe. I think it was something else while you were talking though around that, but now I lost my train of thought because it's getting late and I'm an old man.
Yeah, just let me know when you want to do another stream, and I'll be more than likely available to do it much earlier.
Yeah, I can look into my crystal ball. Doesn't go too far into the future, but I'll take a look and we'll see. Kirk, thanks for jumping on.
You're welcome. Do we have to cut it here, or?
I got like 5 more minutes. You got another deep thought?
So do you go to a synagogue weekly, Antonio?
No, I haven't made the time to go attend synagogue. I've gone a handful of times though.
Okay, yeah. I think I actually recently went to a bat mitzvah, although it was at a Reform one. But that's also one thing I would ask like Jacob about, like how like okay would it be for like a Noahide to go to like a Reform or conservative? Because I think he would say that's like okay, because but I
Well, I
would
think
like to ask him.
the standards and expectations are lower for Gentiles.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the bigger issue is going to be more personal. Like as a Noahide, are you going to be satisfied with going to a Reform conservative synagogue?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but I would like to ask Jacob if that's like, I think that would be allowed, right? Because you wouldn't be violating anything, right?
Yeah, I don't see why there'd be anything wrong with going.
Okay. Well, yeah, I know because I know Jews, like according to like I've heard, Jews are not allowed to Orthodox Jews are not allowed to go to like Reform or conservative buildings, but I don't know if that same reasoning would apply to Noahides. I don't think so.
Based on the recurring pattern theme for what's permissible for Gentiles versus Jews, I'm gonna go ahead and guess no. There's nothing wrong with it.
Okay, and that's fine. Um, I mean, yeah, and the reason I asked because I was going to ask if you read Parsha Vayera, if you wanted to talk about that at all. Um, Not to turn this into like a Bible study, but like if you read that this week, past
Oh,
week.
this week's Parsha?
No, the previous week's Parsha
Oh
Vayera.
no.
Okay, have you read this week's Parsha?
So
I've
I
s-
actually have a book from Jonathan Sachs, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. It's called Essays on Ethics, I think, and he goes through each weekly parsha. And I guess the real cheap way of summarizing what it is, it's kind of like a distillation of the universal ethics from the weekly parsha. And this one was about loving kindness, particularly towards the stranger.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. That sounds like something very Jonathan Saxian, um, and not to say it's a bad thing. That's a good thing. All right, credit. All right, like yeah. Um,
No,
the
I
only
was just
thing is,
amused by how that sounded. Yeah.
yeah, the only thing is, I forgot what is this week's parsha again? Do you know?
Oh, I'm terrible at pronouncing
I
the
know
name.
who does know.
It's about
Wait, Jonathan. Wait, you're a different Jonathan from the Jonathan in chat.
No, I'm the same one.
Wait, you are?
Yep. Well, I'm Jonathan in chat, and yeah, but like that picture of me, if that's what you're looking at, is like 20 years old. Um, no, I'm the same.
Okay.
The
So, well,
three persons, one in Discord, one here in chat, and then one on the stream. So I'm the triune Jonathan.
Triad.
yeah.
Triad, yeah, triad. Um, all right. Parting thoughts.
Nothing. Just was gonna ask what this week's parsha was.
It's oh boy, this is a Hebrew word that even it's about Sarah, the life of Sarah.
Lelaha?
Chayea
No.
Sarah.
Hey, Sarah. Oh yeah.
Yep. That's embarrassing because normally I can usually stumble
Hey, I
my way
don't.
through it.
I just own it. I don't know the Hebrew. I don't speak Hebrew.
Chayea Sarah.
Like saying jalapeno. Although that doesn't apply to me because I can say all the Spanish words. But
Ooh,
but I just I
you have translated it to Lives of Sarah. Interesting. That is interesting. Like I usually end up catching some kind of a shear on YouTube by somebody, and sometimes it's Rabbi Bredowitz. Not really on purpose, but like as the week progresses, it'll like pop up. So I forget who it was. I listened to somebody talk about the life of Sarah recently, so I must be related. All right, I'll bite, Claire. I'm going to pretend that I can only read the Quran if I read it in Arabic. Well, that's what I was told to believe or understand, that it can only really be read in Arabic. So,
Yeah.
Yoav says, yes, language is important. True story, and I have not learned. the Hebrew. On that note, hanging my head in shame, I'm going to end the stream.
Okay.
Till next time.
Peace.
Bye.